Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. March Madness is starting. That's super exciting. That personally is my favorite time of the year, so I'm pretty excited about that. Hope everyone else is too. Hope everybody who filled out brackets is feeling pretty confident this year. We'll see what happens with mine. That's the fun thing about March Madness. It really could go either way, so I'm super excited for that. NBA also is in a fun time of the season right now as well. So we're going to touch on all of that on this episode. But I'm excited to have a really special guest with me today. He does fantastic Celtics content for Celtics Blog. Keith Smith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to have you. I really like your basketball content. So I'm excited to just kind of talk a little bit with you. But before we kind of get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about kind of yourself, how you got involved with working in sports?
Sure. Yeah. Not naturally. I had a very long career before I started working in sports. I grew up in the New England area, just south of Boston. I always wanted to work in sports, but yeah, at my age, it was not one of those things where you just popped on the internet and tried to make it happen. Right? It was you had to almost kind of know someone and things like that. So I my other passion was I did an internship with Disney and I loved it and I wanted to work for Disney. So that's the path I went down instead. But then a little bit later in life, I started covering the league as a part-time job or covering the NBA, I should say. And then that led to 3 weeks before the season paused in 2020, I left Disney after a nearly 20-year career to cover the NBA full time. So my timing is nothing if not impeccable. And then, yeah, but then everything ended up okay, and that's what I do now. So now I cover the NBA, and I'm absolutely loving it. I loved my time with Disney, but I'm thrilled to be covering the NBA on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, what a time! What a time that was. Just right with the pandemic and everything. Just you entering in at that time. That's crazy to
Yeah.
me. But yeah, that must be so rewarding. I mean, sometimes yeah, we all have different passions and everything, but I feel like the goal is always to do something like that. Just do what you're passionate about. If it's work, if it's something you're going to be doing constantly, you want to make sure you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. I like I said, I loved my Disney job, but the basketball became from a part-time job to a second full-time job. And that was just a lot. My wife and I have a daughter who she's involved in all sorts of stuff. And I wanted to be able to go to her games and see things and do things and all those things instead of being like, I gotta write tonight because I gotta be in the office for 8 hours tomorrow and those kind of things. I was using all of my vacation time to do different basketball events and those kind of things. So it was a good change, even if it was a little bit of a rough beginning to do it full time. But we came out on the other side just fine, and I'm absolutely thrilled.
Exactly. Yeah. And at that time, I feel like nobody really knew what was going to happen going forward. So I'm glad that it was kind of able to just restore its, former glory and kind of be back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was pretty terrified for a little bit there of where is this going to go, and then it was in mid-April. I wrote the article for Yahoo Sports about hey, if we're going to really do this restarting a bubble thing, like we should do it at Disney because it's where it makes the most sense, and that just then kind of took on a life of its own, and that was pretty cool for a while, and then and the season came back, and thankfully we are not knock on wood here. We're in a normal year this year after a couple of interrupted seasons. It's been a much more normal year, and I'm very much looking forward to getting on our regular calendar again with the NBA, where we'll be kind of done with free agency and everything by mid to late July by the time summer league wraps up, and then I can maybe get in a little bit of downtime in August before we crank everything back up in September.
Yeah, I was gonna say, give yourself like a month where it's hopefully a down period where you can just
Exactly.
chill for a bit, because that rarely ever happens, probably.
Yeah, no, very, very rare that it goes that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what it is about working in sports. It's just constant. It never really ends. Like this, the work is just constant. So I can only imagine what that must be like. And it's just, the season ends and it's like, okay, yeah, we still have a bunch of other stuff going on here too with free agency. So it's not like you're really taking a break.
Yeah, my sister, who's the best, but she just doesn't get it. She says every year when like the finals is wrapping up, because she sees it on TV and that, she'll be like, "Oh, so that's good. You get a break now." And I'm like, "Actually, I'm about to get really busy because it's free agency time." I was
Not
like, I
quite.
was like, oh, about another 3 weeks from a break, maybe a month or so, and then by the end of July, it's usually pretty good. I usually hopefully making a return to Vegas for summer league this year, and then by the time summer league wraps up in mid July or so, then we'll be ready to have a little bit of fun and do some stuff. And that's great because we still have another month or so before my daughter goes back to school at that point and everything. So it'll be a lot of fun.
And how old is she, your daughter?
She's 11
Oh,
going on
wow.
25.
That's fun. That's
Yep.
definitely fun. Yeah, I mean, kids are definitely probably a lot, but that's cute though. They're
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, it's great. She's a soccer player, so that's her thing. So we have a lot of fun with that, and it's all good. No complaints.
Yeah, I remember even like thinking back to when I was younger and like playing sports, and my dad, like both my parents really going to all the games, or my dad used to coach some of my teams when I was
Yep.
younger too.
Yeah,
So
I did that same thing. Did that same dance. I'd be out there coaching soccer practice or basketball
yeah,
practice, and then running home to watch a game at night. And then that was the roughest part, was watching games till 1, 2 in the morning, and then getting up at 5, 6 to run her to school and going to the office all day. And but like I said, it's all good now.
yeah, no, that's a lot. Like the lack of sleep and everything else, but it's good to have that work life balance. So it's good
Yeah.
that you're able to kind of make that all work.
Yeah, that part makes this. That's just a sweet added bonus to all the rest of this.
Yeah, but then you have nights like tonight where the Celtics play at 10 p.m. And so those starts are definitely tough also.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like for the Celtics, because they played so early on Sunday and then they've had a couple days off and then late. It's like feels like it was another whole All-Star break for
Yeah, it really
them
does. It
before
feels
we're
like it's
gonna
been
get back
forever
out
since
there.
they had a game, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah, because it's going from that day game and then like you said, the days off and then playing, on the West Coast. Now it's like, yeah, it really does feel like it's been forever since they had a game.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, speaking of them, they've really lately obviously been starting to play together. Everything seems to be coming together, clicking. They made some moves at the trade deadline, which seem to have been pretty good so far. I feel like lately they've been playing like the team we knew that they could play like all season. There was just a lot of frustration and just a lot of kind of inconsistency, I should say, early on in the season with this team, but it seems like things are finally starting to come together. So what are kind of your thoughts on where they're at now as we kind of approach, the end of the regular season, crunch time, and playoff time?
Yeah, it was super frustrating through, really all the way up until about New Year's Eve. It was New Year's Eve when they played the Phoenix Suns. They got a big win. They were shorthanded in that game. Phoenix was as well, but Boston was down a couple key players, and they got that win. And Al Horford called out that was a turning point. He said that was the moment when it felt like, all right, maybe we can start figuring things out. And in 2022, they've been one of the best teams in the league. And I know right now people are like, well, they just lost. And it's like, well, yeah, they weren't going to go undefeated the rest of the way. I mean, we got to get serious about that. But they've been playing great. Their defense is incredible. They're super locked in on that end of the floor. They can be very, very hard to score against. And then the offense, I thought it was very interesting. Ime Udoka, when he took over at the beginning of the year, said, I'm going to worry about getting our defense to where it needs to be first, and then we'll worry about the offense. And I think that was probably the right path for this team, because now the defense is locked in and now you're starting to see the offense come around and start to figure things out. And then, yeah, like you said, they made a couple trades at the trade deadline. Derek White has been a fantastic addition to this team. He's kind of been everything they needed as far as someone who can come in, get the ball moving, push the pace, make quick decisions. He's a really, really good defender. They don't play any bad defenders now in their top 8-man rotation. Really 9 if Daniel Tice is in there that night. And that's big, because when you don't have any kind of defensive drop off, it's huge, because that's a good way to make sure you stay in games when they get to the playoffs. So I'm not going to say, this is a finals team or they're going to, put banner 18 in the rafters, but I do think that they have a chance to be competitive. And if we were having this conversation around the holidays, I don't know that that's the song I would have been singing. I would have been saying, let's be patient, they'll turn it around. But I didn't expect them to be quite this good.
Yeah, and I was saying that for a while to people too. I was like, yeah, let's just wait, like, be patient. Like eventually they'll start to figure things out. And some people didn't really want to believe me because they were like, well, they're just really not playing well right now, which is true. They weren't. And I think Ime, there were some things he had to get used to as well, being kind of his first year in the position. I think there were
Hmm.
things he had to get used to in terms of his rotations and how to coach this team really. And I think he's starting to figure that out from the coaching standpoint too, and kind of getting more comfortable with things there. So I think that's been a good thing. But also they just, yeah, I mean, they were inconsistent. They weren't really playing well. They were losing games they should have won. And just it was just disappointing. It was just really disappointing to see that because they have so much talent on the team, and
Hmm.
then you had the people who were saying, well, we should trade Tatum or Brown. And I said I completely disagree with that because I
Yeah.
said these two are kind of your glue that are going to be the ones that'll help fuel a championship. It's a matter of building everybody else around them. Those two, one of them isn't the issue. It's more, yes, their playing styles are different, their personalities are different, but that's what's going to these two players are so young and so talented that those are the guys to me that you have to build around for the future that you need to hang on to if you want to make a serious championship run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everyone in the NBA is looking for wings that play on both ends of the floor that have good size. And yet you had a large amount of people in, Boston media and fandom saying, nah, we got to get rid of one of them. And it was like, everybody wants that, everybody wants, those guys. And I think it also gets forgotten, we're talking about a couple of guys who are still in their, early to mid 20s. It's not, these guys are not, 30 with 10 years under their belt of their career. And, all right, we've seen it. It's not going to work. Like they've done nothing but win together. I know last year was disappointing, but last year was outside of a couple of teams, all of the teams that went deep into the playoffs uh, in the bubble all had disappointing seasons last year. They all fell out earlier than was expected. No, nobody really made that run back. And
Yeah.
that's, I think those teams were worn down and they were tired. They didn't have any kind of break. And now you're seeing, I think the Celtics, they've gotten healthy, they're playing well, and the teams really got it moving. So yeah, anybody who was saying that stuff. I mean, I was, nightly, I felt like banging my head into the, proverbial Twitter wall of like,
Oh
we got to
God.
stop with this, guys. Like, this isn't going to be a thing. But yeah, they're great, together, and they get along well, and all that other stuff gets so overblown. And as a lot of people say, winning fixes everything, right? It cures all, and I think there's a lot of truth to
Fans as
that too.
well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, fans as well, absolutely.
Yeah, fans on Twitter are tough too, especially after a loss. I'm like scrolling through and I'm like, geez, you guys are acting like this team is so bad,
Yeah,
but they're really not. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's people tend to be a little overreactionary, I think, in those situations. But one thing I noticed as of late too is that they're having more fun when they're
yeah.
playing. Like they look like they're just genuinely having fun. And I haven't really been able to say that all season. And I think that's been something as of late that I've noticed that's kind of helped with this whole turnaround too.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. They really are. And again, right, you're winning, so of course that's going to be more fun than losing games. But even just within games, you can see it. I mean, that they're really locked in as a group. It's it's a super minor transaction in terms of anything that's going to happen on the court, but they re-signed Malik Fitz after a couple of 10-day contracts, and they're going to keep him now for the rest of this season. And that signing kind of signals in a big way that they're really prioritizing chemistry and fit and all those things with those guys, because he's one of the guys he's become beloved immediately here because of his bench reactions. Right, him and Luke Cornett have like become like this funny duo. Whenever anything big happens, they're going absolutely crazy. But that's, you need guys like that, right? Those are the good vibes guys, the guys who kind of get everybody going and make everybody feel good. So yeah, I think they're in a great place right now mentally, and they've got some tough, challenging games the rest of the way. Let's see what happens. This West Coast trip, is going to be kind of big because those games are always hard to win, even no matter who you're playing. But we're down the stretch here. We only got about 3 weeks left to go in the season, so it's time to start stacking wins again and see where we go in the postseason. But it's been a lot of fun watching this team get to this point.
Oh, I agree for sure. And people were saying for a while, is this for real? Are they going to be able to maintain this? Or did they just go on a hot streak, And at first it was hard to know for sure,
Sure.
because of all the inconsistency from this season. But the more wins that they started to put together against good teams, the more confident I think people were starting to feel that, this is for real. This is the Celtics team that people have been waiting for, that we were just kind of being patient with to see if they could figure things out. And I think now, I'm looking back to even games like that game against the Nets a couple weeks ago, that win against the Nets, that was a really, really competitive game. And the Nets were healthy. I mean, they obviously that whole trade happened after that, but still, I mean, they're good. Obviously, Brooklyn is scary when they're fully healthy and they're playing their best basketball. And that to me was one of those wins that's a big confidence boost for the Celtics, because it's like, it shows, the East is tough, but they can compete with the best teams in the East if they are playing their best basketball.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you have Jason Tatum going toe to toe with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, you got to feel pretty good about it. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was an absolute blast to watch. Anyway, I had a moment during that game where I was like, "This is." It kind of related back to our earlier conversation, but this is what I get paid to do. Like, this is awesome. Like, I was kind of, for a minute there, I was like, who has a better life than me? Like, this is great. So yeah,
basketball games.
exactly. Right. Like it was just, so cool. But yeah, I tried for months to preach, just be patient. There's a lot of change that happened with this team. There's guys in new roles. Ime Udoka is going to learn on the fly. I always say, we wouldn't take a rookie player, hopefully, and say, that guy stinks, get him out of here, after, 30, 40 games. I mean, I know people do, but we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do it with a coach either, right? He needs to figure things out too. It's a big adjustment for him. So I think what we're seeing with this team now is it's come together. And I wrote for Celtics Blog, there was a quote that stuck out to me from August with Brad Stevens. It was kind of when he was sort of done building the roster. And he said one of his goals was to build a team Boston could be proud of. And that quote really stuck with me. And I wrote for Celtics Blog, like, we're here. Almost no matter what happens the rest of the year, this is a team now you can be proud of rooting for. And that's not where we were in October and November. I fully own that and get that. But yeah, it finally, we're there. And, it's a team. I'm seeing a lot more people now, even after that Mavs game. Yeah, there were some people who were like, this is ridiculous. We're right back to being terrible. But there were a lot more people who were like, you know what, we lost, but it was fun. Like, they were right there. They were playing really hard and all those kind of things. And that's, I think, where you want to be.
Yeah, and it's not like they got blown out in that game.
No.
Like, that was a close, competitive game,
Yeah.
and it's not like they played poorly. You know what I mean? It was a good game, but they're just not going to win them all. And obviously, it was frustrating how that game ended. Even I'd say the whole fourth quarter was pretty frustrating, but just in general, it's just they're not going to win every game. But as long as they're competitive and they're keeping pace with these good teams, and that's really what we can ask for from them right now. Because obviously now going down the stretch into these next few weeks, it's like, yeah, I mean, as long as they can just continue to string together wins against good teams, then I feel pretty good about going into the postseason.
Yeah, that's it. The way they defend, they're going to be in more games than they're not going to be. You may have tough shooting nights, and there's going to be nights where they're struggling to put the ball in the basket, but their defense is going to keep them in more games than not, and that's huge. That's when you can defend that way, you have a chance every single night, no matter what. If you're a team that's more reliant on just scoring the ball, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. Now, that's going to still be a challenge, right? When they play some of the best teams or teams that are also pretty good defensively, they're going to have to find a way to manufacture points. And there were parts of the Dallas game that were frustrating. The ball and player movement wasn't what it had been, but Dallas is also one of the best defensive teams in the league, and they play a style that's a little bit different than a lot of other teams. So, get back into a more normal type matchup, and then I think you'll see them play well. So tonight's a big one, as we're recording this on Wednesday night, they got the Warriors, and that's, another kind of measuring stick game to see, all right, where are we at? Because they're one of the better teams in the league, and they're back to full, or at least relative full health. So that's going to be a fun one tonight.
Yeah, they've been so good this year too. So good. And I think people knew, they were going to be a good team, but definitely I think a little bit unexpected how good they actually really were, even without Klay Thompson. So I think that's it was just pretty impressive what they were doing even early on this season. But yeah, I think this game is definitely going to be a good one for sure. It's kind of a test game as well, just to see, where are the Celtics at compared to some of these really good teams in the West as well, and so it'll be good to see them match up against them tonight. Like, I'm excited for this one. Hopefully it's close. Hopefully it's similar to how that Mavs game was, but obviously hopefully with a different result.
Yeah, right. That's what we're always hoping for.
Yeah, but one of the other things I've liked about this team this year is just watching how much like Rob Williams and also Grant Williams have improved this year. I feel like they both have grown a lot this season, and it's really, really helped the Celtics out tremendously, I think.
Yeah, big time. Rob's ability just to stay on the floor is huge. He's had so many years where he was good, but it was good for like a week and then he'd be out for 3 weeks and those kind of things. Or he was, could only play 10, 15 minutes a night. But now his ability to play 30 minutes a night, hold down, his spot in the rotation, do all of his stuff has been huge for this team because he's such a presence defensively. He's also a good passer. That allows them to really run the same offense no matter which one of the bigs is in the game. And then Grant Williams coming back, I thought it was really cool to see him come back and say, he told us right at the beginning of training camp, last year I got too heavy. I knew I was going to have to play a lot of minutes at the 4 and the 5, and I wanted to bulk up and be bigger. And he's like, and that took away a lot of what I needed to do. And he came back in great shape. And then, you could tell he worked on his jump shot a lot. And now he's really developed into being one of the most consistent shooters on the team. So that's absolutely huge to have him be able to do those kind of things because that gives Ime Udoka, whether it's his 3 big rotation of Horford and the 2 Williamses, or if he goes to the 4 big, which he does occasionally and works Daniel Tyson there, you're seeing 4 guys who just really, you can mix and match and play almost any groupings together, and you're going to be pretty solid on that back line.
Yeah, that's why that's been so big for them this year too. And I definitely I've always been a fan of Grant, but I think some people kind of lost a lot of patience with him before this season.
Sure.
But his development this year in particular, I think has been a big factor in their success this year. And I feel like it's not really talked about enough, but I definitely think he's been such a big X factor for them this year.
Yeah, huge. The thing that I think is great is, I felt like he'd figure out the shot. I thought like that would come along because we've seen evidence of it at times in the past. But his ability now to put the ball on the floor and attack off the bounce is huge because he hadn't been able to do that much at all in his first couple of years. His first year was, he's just he would take some jump shots or he'd duck in on post ups every once in a while and those kind of things. Last year was a lot of just standstill jump shooting, and that was about all he did. And now this year, they're using him in a lot of different ways. He's become one of the better cutters on the team, too. He has a really good sense of, all right, it's time to go, leave the corner and get to the basket and those kind of things. He does a nice job on the offensive glass, and he's maintained his defensive ability, and I think even improved because with the lost weight, now he can go back to defending guys out on the perimeter and hold his own, where last year that was such a problem. He just couldn't stay in front of those quicker wings and guards because he was carrying a little bit more weight.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely. And I really like watching him play. I think he's a super fun player to watch this year. And I just think that being here has really helped with his development. I think he kind of just fits in here. And I think it's, he enjoys playing here too. And I think he's going to continue to develop. And that's what I really like about him. He has such a high ceiling to me. I feel like as long as he stays healthy. So I think it's going to be fun kind of going forward to continue to watch his progress. And even some of the younger players too. I've always been a fan of Peyton Pritchard, even when he was in college. I really liked him. So I was really happy that he came to the Celtics, but even players like that who are part of the Celtics future, it's presumably it's fun to when in games, especially when it's a blowout and in the fourth quarter, he'll put in a lot of those players, kind of like the baby Celtics, kind of I like to call them. Them too, even I feel like there's been a lot of room lately for them to be able to get more playing time and more exposure. And I think that's going to be huge, especially going into the postseason too. And Ime being able to just have more options off the bench, which depth off the bench has kind of been an issue the past few years for the Celtics too. And so I think having those situations where, the Celtics were up by a lot, so he could afford to do that. I think that's actually more helpful than people might realize it is, because I think it's giving them all time to really, really, show off their skills and get exposure to more playing time.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, I'm a big fan of always saying it all matters, right? Even that garbage time minutes, they matter because that's sometimes when a guy shows something and that earns him minutes in the next game that are more meaningful minutes, say in a closer game. And I think Peyton Pritchard is owed a lot of credit for sticking with it because it was clearly a tough year for him, right? Dennis Schroeder came in and basically took his job, and that became all right. Well, I'm not the backup point guard anymore. I'm only going to play every, maybe third game or so, and that's tough to find a rhythm. And I always say too, you have to put yourself in the mindset of one of these young guys who comes into the NBA. From the time they were probably 10 years old, they've probably been the best player on every single basketball team they've ever played on. And they have the ball a lot. They play as many minutes as they can. They dominate. They do all these things. And then they get into the NBA, and some of them that just continues. But other guys, it's like, okay, cool. Now you're going to play every third game and you might only play 5 minutes. And that's hard, right? Because that's a complete change of mindset. Some guys get it. Some guys never figure it out and they, go a different way in their career. But I think Peyton Pritchard just stayed ready, kept doing his work. Jaylen Brown talked about it after Pritchard had a big game probably about 2 weeks ago. Brown said, this guy just kept working and never let his confidence falter, never, believed anything different, just kept putting in his work. And that's huge because now what you end up seeing is now he has a rotation role. He plays every night, plays, 15, 20 minutes a game. And he's been able to step up and do some things in those games. And that's been big. And the Celtics are going to need more of that the rest of the season. He's got a, key rotation spot locked down now.
Yeah, when he comes up big with those threes, sometimes it's just like, yeah, here we go. Like Pritchard's at it again. He's locked in. And I feel like that might be a little bit underrated how much that's actually helped because that's something that now, like you can rely on somebody like him down the stretch sometimes in games to come in and do that. And like you said, I mean, yeah, I admire him for that and for kind of sticking with it, not really complaining, just kind of continuing to put the work in and just saying, this is what it is, but just patiently waiting for his turn. And now he makes an impact every time he is on the court. So it obviously was worth it for him. And he's becoming a more valuable piece to the Celtics.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, in his shooting range, the fact that, you have to defend him 4 or 5 feet behind the line is huge because that just opens up the floor for other guys. It's something I've noticed Jason Tatum takes a lot of advantage of when he's out there with Peyton Pritchard is because there's that just a little extra spacing because Pritchard has this guy pulled away. That allows Tatum to get into those gaps. He's, changed the way he's been playing quite a bit. He's really getting downhill a lot now, getting to the rim, and that's big. But in order to be able to do that, you can't let the floor shrink. You have to have the floor opened up. So that means you have to have shooters out there and guys spacing around. And Pritchard's done a great job with that. So it's good. Yeah, like I said, they don't have any real weak links defensively in that group. Pritchard is probably the weakest defender of their top 8 that play regularly, but that's more just a size thing. But he's tough, especially on ball. He holds his own and he can guard just about anybody on ball. And so few teams are willing to come out of what they normally do to just say, well, we're just going to go after the smallest player on the floor. It just doesn't happen, all that often. That's something we'll have to watch in the playoffs. And that maybe, I think, is where they were hoping Aaron Nesmith might have stayed healthy and made more of his minutes that he was getting after the trade deadline. But, for now, it is what it is. And, if they need to cut down and give Derek White more minutes, they'll do that and just go with a little shorter rotation. That may be the way it goes. But for now, Pritchard's doing just fine.
He is. No, he totally is. And that's happy for me I'm happy to see that because I've always been a Peyton Pritchard fan, like I said. So players like that. Yeah, I mean, it's tough, like you said, just being a rookie in the NBA and just having to adapt to that playing style, that mindset. It's so much different from playing in college. And so it's it's some of these players, it kind of takes them time to find their stride and kind of find their navigate their way through the league per se and kind of how things work and kind of finding their identity on the court. And I feel like he's doing a better job now of identifying that and being able to really figure out how he can contribute in a positive way. And I think it's going to pay off even more than it is now. I think he's going to start to have more and more playing time because he's showing that he can and that he's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the NBA game is just a completely different game from the college game too. And I enjoy college basketball. I don't have a lot of time with it, just covering the NBA. Don't spend a lot of time. I will obviously this week with March Madness starting and the
So
tournament starting
excited.
up. I mean, who doesn't, right? You have to watch the tournament. That's great no matter what. It's just great theater, if nothing else. But yeah, it's one of those things. It is a very, very different game. It's a lot more physical. It's that there's not the talent is a lot more even. Everybody can play in the NBA. There's no games against East-West directional state where it's you're if you're Oregon, you're up by 35 minutes into the game, and then you're just kind of doing your thing. So it does take a little while to adjust. And like I said too, it is big for these guys to be able to figure it out when they're not playing night to night to be able to keep that going. So yeah, it's been great to see.
Yeah, no, it totally has. And yeah, no, speaking of March Madness, I'm a huge UConn fan, so I'm a little bit nervous for them, but I'm super excited. 'Cause, yeah, they had a good season, so I'm excited for that. But
I
yeah,
pull
no,
for all of the New England schools because I'm a BC guy and they don't. Sometimes I wonder if they play basketball anymore. I shouldn't say that because they made a nice little run in the ACC tournament, but I'll be pulling for Vermont and Providence and Bryant. And they're let's see, they're a 16 seed, but UConn, Yale.
it's cool for
I'll
them to
have
have
my eyes
gotten
on
in
them.
though, Brian.
What's that?
It's cool for Bryant just to probably
Yeah,
be
just to be
in, you know
there.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
huge. Yeah. I mean, I remember when Vermont went and they were supposed to just be there and they beat Syracuse. So it's that's always fun. And
Which I was
it's
happy
I
about.
love the tournament. It's great. It's two of my most favorite days of the year. Those are always 2 vacation days every year when I was in my
Yeah,
corporate world.
yep. Yep. My dad always takes like that Thursday, the first day of the tournament off from work because he's like, I have to. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not
this
going to
is
get
one of
anything
the
done
best days of the year.
anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's
You
like, yeah, I have to. I have no choice. It's like one of the best days of the year. But yeah, my
Yeah,
mom went
absolutely.
to Boston College,
Oh,
so
nice.
she's obviously always been a big BC person. But yeah, it's fun because like all those upsets, there's just so much, especially in those first 2 days.
Yeah.
Like so much craziness happens.
Yeah, that's when we fall in love with like Montana State or somebody like that, right? We all become fans of that team for one day, unless you're the one school who's playing them and they're up. Like I always think of what was it, UMBC beat Virginia, one of the first
That's right.
16 to beat a one, and like everybody was like, oh man, we are all in on this team, for that one night. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was like Oral Roberts last year because like
Yeah.
I hadn't even heard of that school, and then all of a sudden, like they went relatively far too. So I remember
Hmm.
people were genuinely cheering for them to like go further because it was
Yeah.
cool, you
Yep.
know.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But yeah, I love March Madness. That was kind of a side note when I mentioned UConn. But yeah, so who in the Eastern Conference are you most concerned about the Celtics facing going into the playoffs?
Brooklyn, if it should come to pass, they're just going to be tough. It's we don't know if Kyrie will be able to play in games in Brooklyn or not. Right now, he can't, but we'll see what happens there. But Kevin Durant, anytime you go against a guy like him, he can almost win a game all by himself. So you got to be really nervous about that. Miami's always tough just because they're gonna defend, they're gonna be physical. They're I think Boston's better positioned now than they were when they played them a couple years ago in the bubble because this team likes that same kind of game. Like yeah, let's make it messy. Let's turn it into a rock fight. Like we're here for this. Philly's just always hard because Joel Embiid, they don't have a great answer for him. Al Horford does about as good a job as anybody does in the NBA of defending him, as has Daniel Tice, which I think was a big part of getting him back. But I think the challenge comes in with that specific matchup is it's just between Embiid and Harden. It's just, they're going to take, 25, 30, 40 free throws between the two of them. And you just have to, kind of swallow hard and say, all right, it's going to happen. I cannot get mad about every single ticky-tack call. And then I feel like I'm naming everybody off. The last one I'll give you, Milwaukee, because of Giannis. I mean, he's just so good. And they're the champs. So that's going to be tough too. But yeah, I mean, the East playoffs are going to be fantastic this year.
Yeah, there's going to be so many good matchups this year. I mean, and even the Bulls. I mean, they're pretty good this year as well. I mean, that would be an interesting matchup, Celtics Bulls. So I think there's a lot of good teams, and that's why it's going to be really fun because it's so hard to know like who I would rather face versus not. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it could be any team can just get hot and just go the whole way, and it's really hard to know that for sure. But I mean, I'm with you on Brooklyn. I think I don't really want anything to do with the Nets because they've fully healthy. We all know, as we all know, and everybody knew this already, Brooklyn can be super scary. Like, obviously, granted, they weren't healthy all season. They had injuries and all that, but people knew that the Nets could play like this, and people knew that, they had the potential to really beat anybody in the Eastern Conference, which I do think they can. So that would be tough, but I'm looking at everybody else in the East, and I think the Celtics are right up there with all of those teams. Like, I think they can beat Miami, they can beat Chicago, like they can beat Milwaukee. Granted, it won't be easy, and I think these will be close games, but I think that they can compete with any of those teams and make it a good series, regardless of who comes out of it.
Yeah, if we were to talk in the beginning of June and the Celtics are getting ready to start the NBA Finals, this might sound weird to put it. I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be a little surprised, I guess is the best way to put it. It's that'd be kind of a surprise because there's so many good teams in the East, and that's maybe a little further than I think the Celtics will go. But I wouldn't be entirely shocked. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Because again, not to keep harping on the same thing, but the way they defend, they're gonna give themselves a chance in every game. And they're also set up. The playoffs are about making adjustments and then making adjustments to those adjustments. And the Celtics, with their versatility of the way they defend and their size, they are set up better to go in and adjust to whatever it is the opponent is going to do, more so than a lot of other teams. It's not like they're going to get chased out of what they do defensively because of they're dealing with weak links. And I'm not, I truly mean this. I love Kemba Walker, but that was a weak link in the playoffs because you knew teams were going to go at him and he was going to have to really hold his own defensively. He couldn't play the switching system they wanted to play. That was the same thing even when Kyrie was on the team and even Isaiah Thomas. Now you don't have that. You don't have anybody that you have to change the way you want to play defense to keep that player on the floor for their offense. And that's big. It's been a big part of this push in this second half ish of the season. It really started a little bit before that, but that push and since the trade deadline, you're really taking off as well, is because they don't have to, they can just do what they do. And that's going to be big in the postseason because no matter who they play, they can just kind of do their thing defensively and hope to hold their own.
Yeah, and that's definitely interesting. And it's just sad with Kemba. I really wanted him to work out here because, I mean, for one, he's a UConn guy, so I already am biased towards that. But also, I just really like him. He's just a good guy, and talented player. So I just was hoping that he would have worked out here. I just think it wasn't the right fit. You know what I mean? And we all figured that out, but it just wasn't the right fit for him. But at the end of the day, obviously, like I was like, oh yeah, he should be in Boston. Like, he's a UConn guy. Like, for me, this is nice. But I mean, and I think a lot of the people on the team now, like even we brought up Derek White earlier, I think like this team is just a good fit for somebody like him. Like, I think with his playing style and what the Celtics really needed, I feel like he was able to fill holes on this team at that trade deadline. And I think, obviously we weren't sure how Brad Stevens was going to approach the trade deadline or what kind of players he was going to bring in. But I think Derek White is somebody who kind of addressed a lot of immediate needs and may not be perfect, but is pretty close to that, I feel like, in terms of his fit with this Celtics team right now and kind of what they need.
Yeah, they wanted another guy who is switchable defensively, hold his own. And then they talk a lot about him being a 0.5 second player, which means you get the ball, you have 0.5 seconds, you make a decision. You pass, you dribble, you attack, you shoot, whatever it is. And that's what he does. And that's a Spurs thing. That's, the Spurs have been drilling that for years and years and years. And Derek White is a perfect example of get that. And that's just different. And it's not that Dennis Schroeder is a bad player. It's not that Josh Richardson is a bad player. They're just neither one of them is the defender that White is, and neither one of them is a guy who gets the ball and goes. It's going to be, I'm going to survey it, I'm going to hold it, I'm going to kind of do the whole deal where you're rolling it and you're massaging it in your hands and getting that feel for it, and then I'm going to attack. That's not what they needed. They have the guys who do that already. They have Tatum and Brown who do that. Even occasionally Marcus Smart will do that. They needed guys who were going to get it, go, do their thing. And that's been big. And then you see a lot when they're playing well, Derek White's kind of energy and quickness and speed and everything that he comes into a game with, it just lifts everybody. And then everybody goes. And when he gets that ball and tears the other way, you have to go with him. Otherwise you're going to be watching. And so then that gets everybody else running. And then they become just a very different team. So it's been a huge addition in that sense.
Yeah, he totally has, because you do see a difference with him out there. You know what I mean? And if you think back to the pre Derek White Celtics earlier in the season, it is a different team, and it's a good different. You know what I mean? Like, they're definitely improved. I do like Josh Richardson, obviously, as a player. I mean, not faulting the guy, it just he wasn't what we needed at the time, and it just kind of made sense to move on from him and from Schroeder, because those were the guys that just weren't really fitting as much in with what the Celtics are trying to do. But I do really like how they're playing now. Daniel Tice, like, I'm happy he's back. His familiarity with Boston, I think, is huge too. So it's good to have him back. He's a good addition. And so I think, I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm excited for the playoffs. I'm excited to kind of see what they can do this year, because they are looking really, really good. So I'm excited we're having this conversation and not a conversation of, they might be a first round exit, because I mean, maybe because of how
It might
strong
have been worse the way it looked
yeah,
for a while. We would have been talking
exactly.
about some of the draft prospects in the tournament, the way it was looking for a little bit there. So yeah, no, I hear you. I'm excited the way they're playing too, because it just makes my job a lot easier, because I don't have nightly. I'm not dealing with 1,000 angry people in my mentions yelling the same thing about fire and trade everybody.
Exactly. Yep, and that is exactly how it goes too.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm super excited. I think it should be a lot of fun. I appreciate you hopping on the show with me. I always love talking basketball. I could really do this all day with you. So I'm looking forward to it, to see what happens. As always, everyone, really, really appreciate you tuning into the show, constantly supporting me. I really appreciate that. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week. So take care, everyone.